Hi everyone, I'm really happy today to introduce you to Sophie La Brozec. So a short introduction, Sophie is a lifestyle entrepreneur, psychologist, magazine ambassador, author, blogger, teacher, mentor, mom, and eternal optimist. So actually I'm going to ask her a little bit about eternal optimist. I think I'm a stubborn optimist. And I think my husband called himself a patient optimist. Anyway, so, Sophie is passionate about helping others to get their best, happiest, and most fulfilled life together. So, I'm really thrilled to interview you today. So, welcome to my show, Sophie.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. So, now, before we dive in a little bit more about your work, what I'm really curious about is that I know you're British and you are not living in Britain. And in a way, we're quite similar because we both marry a French person. And I'm living in Australia with my Frenchman, and you're Mauritius. And yes, and you live in various countries. And I know for myself how it influenced me, but I want to hear how does it influence you to become a lifestyle entrepreneur? And if people don't quite know the term, then what does it mean to be a lifestyle entrepreneur?
Okay, so it really confuses people because I have a French name, but I am actually British and I married a Frenchman. So I actually lived in the south of France for 12 years, which is where I met my husband and had my first daughter. Then we were in London for 5 years. And then nearly 4 years ago, we moved to Mauritius, which for those who don't know is an island, tropical island in the Indian Ocean, just to the east of Madagascar in Africa. And so living in these different places with these different cultures and religions and languages and everything has really sort of sculpted how I see life, because it's really interesting because things are very different, but also things are very much the same. So it's very interesting when I speak. So I work with women, and the women I see across all walks of life. So I have women who I work with who are Muslim, Hindu, Christian, atheist, spiritualists. I have, all walks of life, but they are all struggling with the same things. So it might be something like overwhelm. It might be like thinking, is this it? Doesn't it get any better than this? Or how do I get balance in my life? Or how do I, have the career that I want, or the relationship I want, or dealing with my kids and things, being happier there. So what I've realized across living all these different places and meeting people from all these walks of life is that we're all struggling with very similar things. So you asked as well about lifestyle entrepreneur. So I don't even know if that's a term that exists or whether I made it up. So basically I'm an entrepreneur, and what I do is it's all about helping people get their best and happiest, most fulfilled life, as you said earlier. But for me, it's really about sort of digging down deep, because these days, in the past, like our lives were work, home, and like they were very separate boxes. Now everything's kind of got mixed together. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, if you think now with smartphones and things like this, we are constantly doing work in the evening from home. So there's a real mix now of our lives between our personal and our professional lives. So for me, lifestyle entrepreneur is really sort of bringing together all the different areas of our lives and just helping people in these different areas. And so I don't know if it's a term that exists or whether I just created it, but it kind of sums up for me what I'm doing.
I think it makes sense. I think also because of your background about traveling, living in different places and meeting different people. And for me, it's very similar. I actually also spent 5 years in London. I spent 2 years in Norway and a lot of time in France. And then eventually I moved to Australia. But I started really my coaching practice, the coaching work in Australia. So a lot of times I work with people at the beginning, it's Australian, and now, of course, it's more international. But I definitely agree with you that looking at different, I think for me, it's definitely that people seem to have the same problem. It's more like depends on what life stage people are at, right? So whether it's about transitioning from a career woman to a mother, or when you're older, you may consider, should I change my career? Is it something more? So I find that they're definitely like a theme of, what people are looking for, needed help. But actually between different countries, the difference isn't so big. Like, we have the same theme, which really resonate with me, because with my first book, Goddess of Many Faces, I also talk about like the myths that we encounter in different culture. They are the same in terms of the theme, and they're timeless, whether it's 500 years ago or it's more, or I don't know, 1,000 years ago, because we have the same fear and desire, dream and conflict among ourselves. So I really resonate what you say, but I felt that because you have been living and working with different people, it gives you a different perspective, probably more open. And the way you work with people were coming from, looking at different angle about how to solve a problem or look at it differently. So I think that really brings the value of working with someone that perhaps have that experience, So I think it's super exciting to have your lifestyle. And I thought the lifestyle entrepreneur kind of makes sense, because, you kind of, it's in a way it sounds like coaching work that I do, but because it also is related to helping people to create a better, happier life. So anyway, that's why I think like we kind of like click when we started contacting each other, because we're kind of doing similar things and like about similar things. So a little bit related to the first question, I know you're very passionate about creating a happier life, but what leads you to this path in terms of, I guess there's a part of you that, you embrace the inner calling, doing the things that make you joyous and fulfilled, and you want to share with others, help them do the same. But what happened, or what led you to your path, and then later on want to do the same for the others?
So you already said that I'm an eternal optimist, but despite being an eternal optimist, I've had times in my life where things have been very, very hard. So things like I struggled with postnatal depression after having my first baby. My first business failed during the global recession, and it meant I sold my forever home, my dream home that I'd bought from architect's plans and watched it being built over 2 years. I ended up moving back in with my parents when I was 34 years old with my husband and our 3-year-old daughter. There's lots of things that have happened that have been very, very hard. And I didn't have the tools at the time to deal with them. And over the years, I'm a big believer in lifelong learning. Mm-hmm. So I read a lot, I listen to lots of podcasts, I love documentaries. and so over the years, I learned how I could have better dealt with these things. And I was like, wow, why did no one teach me this stuff? When I was at school, I got taught so much stuff that just never served me in my life. But really key stuff like interpersonal relationships, like how to deal with failure, how to deal with decision making, how all these kinds of things. Why did no one teach me this kind of stuff? And so originally I had a mummy blog. So I started that when my youngest, actually when I was pregnant with my youngest. And I realized over the years that I was less blogging about being a mum and was blogging more about all these kinds of things that I'd learned and had helped me. And I got people saying to me, can you teach us this stuff? Where can I find these things out? And so at the start of 2018, I put together a program called Life Reboot Camp, which pulls this all together, because I realized we need a toolkit. Mm-hmm. Just because I know this stuff now doesn't mean that other people do. And it can make life so much easier and less painful if we know how to deal with failures or wrong decisions. Now, when I say failures, it's like in inverted commas, because I don't agree that failures exist. I don't agree that wrong decisions exist. That's a whole other discussion for another day. But these kind of negative things where society will frown upon us and say, whoa, you made a mistake, this is bad. But I know now that there are ways to deal with these things. Or things like, when we are arguing in our marriage or struggling to deal with our kids and turning into shouty mummy, I learned tools to deal with all this. So I was like, wow, if someone had been able to present this to me in the past, my whole life would have been so much better. My marriage would have been so much easier over the years, so many things. I was like, right, okay, it's my duty to share this with other people.
It makes total sense. And I agree with you, there's no failure, only if you failure to learn from the failure. And that got me curious. So if you can, rewind time in your head and talk to when you were 34 years old, when the big, thing hit you, what would you say to that Sophie? What would you say to her? Because she must be shattered when the business didn't go well. the biggest sort of negative thing happen, perhaps, that he?
Yeah, it was awful. It felt like I was such a failure. I was moving my husband and my 3-year-old daughter into my childhood home. The place that I couldn't wait to escape from when I was 18. I love my parents, but I was really like independence, leaving home and everything. And I moved them back in there. I had no job. I had no home. We'd got rid of nearly all our belongings to move from France back to the UK. And it was an adventure, like going and let's do, what work we can get now. But at the same time, I really felt I'd taken the biggest step backwards. And I really struggled for the first few months that we were in the UK. Now, if I, as 43-year-old Sophie, could talk to 34-year-old Sophie, I would say, you have got the most exciting adventure ahead of you. Because I think at the time, I thought, that's it. I had my one chance. I blew it. And I'm done. I just need to get through the next, 50 years or whatever. That, I blew it. I just didn't know where I could go from here. So if I was to speak to that Sophie feeling really low, I would say to her, there is so much exciting stuff ahead of you. And 2 really amazing kind of quotes that got me through things later on. One is a Steve Jobs quote. He says, you can only join the dots looking backwards, not looking forwards.
Yep.
So don't try and figure it out now. Just know that it will all slot into place. So that's one thing. And another is, you cannot enjoy ecstasy until you have experienced agony. And you really need those down times to be able to appreciate when something's really good. And so by having that bad time when I moved, back to the UK into my childhood home, it made me really appreciate what came next. And then obviously when I moved to Mauritius and I've got this big house with a swimming pool in my back garden, then I got such a comparison.
Yeah, and you didn't just have one chance and you didn't blow it. I love what you just said, because for me, from my experience about talking to people, working with people, you really hit something really on the head about, how we see failure. And, at that time when you look at your 34-year-old self, it's like, oh my God, I shrink so small. But then without that experience, you actually wouldn't collect all these lessons or knowledge or experience. And now I'm sure in some way or form shape you to become the person you are, who can help others, because you will not be as deep or as thoughtful, or you just haven't got enough for you to become who you are now. And I have to say, sometimes you talk to some younger coaches or teachers, even if they're very skilled at certain things, you felt they just haven't had enough of that life experience to share. So the way we connect with one another, sometimes you just felt there's something about this person, I cannot name it, but I can feel it and she can help me. That's that part of things. And I think that's invaluable. You can't just go to some kind of school, pay X amount of dollar and learn it. That's hard-earned life lessons that you had.
No, definitely. And I actually joke with the women I work with. I say, if you're looking for some kind of perfect textbook coach, you're in the wrong place. Because we get really brutal. We go right down to the core of what's going on. And I know, because I've lied to myself in the past, as you're struggling with things. So I can see it in other people. I can see when they're lying to themselves, when they're pretending, when they're putting on an act. And I think this is what helps us connect. It's not because I'm referring back to lessons that I've done or something. I'm pulling on my own actual experience.
Yeah, you can totally relate, and they can feel it. If someone just hypothetically able to relate, it's very different than having a first-hand experience. So wow, that was really great. And I know recently you published a book. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? What it's all about and what prompted you to do this?
My book is How to Be Happy No Matter What. I don't know if I can swear on this program.
Yes,
Okay, so How to Be Happy No Matter What Shit Life Throws at You. So this is a part memoir, part personal development. So in fact, the chapters are either stories from my life, where I share something really difficult that's happened. So it might be, for example, my business failure and moving back in with my parents. It might be, for example, my very first job when I was in France. I saw my boss in handcuffs on the TV news one evening, and then it turned out that he was linked to the Russian mafia and all kinds of stuff. I also talk about things like miscarriage, postnatal depression, emotional abusive relationships, all this kind of stuff. So I share very, very honestly and openly these things that have happened to me, how I dealt with it or what I learned from it. And then other chapters are more personal development, where I explain how you can deal with shame, how you can deal with mummy guilt, how you can deal when it feels like there's no way out, and all things like this. So it's a deeply personal journey, but with lessons in there as well.
Like practical use.
Yeah, absolutely practical. And so the book actually came about because for about 20 years, I was always like, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. And I had all these different ideas. And then sort of at the start of this year, I was like, no, this year I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. And I came across, do you know Leonie Dawson? She's in Australia. Yeah, so she had a book writing course, and I was like, okay, let's just do it and see what happens. And that was the kick up the backside that I needed. And I sat down, and at the time, it was my 6-year-old's school holiday. She had 3-week school holidays. I was launching and creating a whole new program, as well as my existing Life Reboot camp. And I was like, no, I'm going to do this. So 1 hour a day, I just sat down. I was like, no one disturb me. Everything was switched off, like do not disturb on the door. And for 1 hour, I just sat and wrote. And I think because it was so ready, it was really time for me to share this, that it just absolutely flowed. And in 6 weeks, the book was written. Then it got edited and it came out in July. So, and I've had amazing feedback on it so far.
How exciting. And I love the whole process of writing the book and working with my editors. And for me, writing a book is such a personal, intimate journey, because you're sharing people what's in your head. I thought that's the most thing ever. And often we share about our own personal story because it kind of lands into the messages we want to, or the lessons we want to bring to people, right? So for me, it's highly personal. And when I was working on a book, and I'm sure it's the same with you, a lot of things came back out, like all these lessons learned, all these memories. And it's almost that we got to work on ourselves during this time as well before we can share it properly and make it coherent, comprehensive, understandable, and meaningful. So I find it a fantastic experience for me. So what have you learned from writing or publishing this book? We have different lessons and different things. Well, what is the most surprising thing you have discovered during this journey?
I think just how, although I'd done so much work on myself, I hadn't realized that there was still work to be done, because as I wrote it, I almost wrote it like it was a diary. Although I knew I was going to be publishing it, I've got to a stage now that I'm very comfortable sharing these experiences, sharing with absolute honesty, because I know that's the only way that other people are going to be able to work through their difficult times, is if they know they're not alone. So although there's horrible things in there, horrible things that happened to me, or, when I was in a bad place and stuff like that, I knew that to help others, I needed to reveal it. And it was really interesting because as I wrote it, it was really cathartic. It was really like getting it out. And although, as I said, I'd done lots of work on myself, I hadn't realized that there was still more to be done. So as I was writing it, I was really like letting off this big weight at the same time.
Crying at the same time? Is it familiar? No, keep going. Yeah.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, definitely really, really cathartic.
And I remember I was comparing this to, like cleaning house. You think you've done the good job, and then suddenly turn around and that's still dust, or it's still a mess. So yeah, I definitely get it. But I don't know, for those who are listening in, if they have a story, actually everybody have a story to share. And if people feel it is their inner calling, I definitely encourage people to write the story, write a book, because we just testify how healing it is for us to share this to others. And, for me, when I was doing it, if only I can help one person, I'll be happy. It's not so much for self-indulgence. I felt it was just like your story. I felt it's totally, we've been through it, or we discovered something. Here you go. If that helps you, fantastic. If not, at least I put it out there in the open. Just hope that will help one person.
No, for me, I definitely felt this way. And it was interesting because when I was writing it, I wasn't really thinking who's going to read this and what are people going to think about this. I really wrote what needed to be written, and then it was finished. And I was like, the same as you, if this helps one person, then, this has been a success. And even if it doesn't, like just what it's done for me, it means it's been a success anyway. So yeah, definitely it's that feeling of sort of like, you just need to get it out there.
And it's funny, how in marketing or in different, teachings of writing, it talk about how you have your avatar and you write to this one person. I mean, yes and no. Like, I think that's great in theory, but when we're doing it, there are times that, you can't really pinpoint after, because actually many women may share some of your low experience, but then some of the successes as well. So it's really a mix. So I think that, at the end of the day, you can't really pinpoint, oh, this is the avatar I'm writing to. You just got to write what is in you, isn't it? Like, you can't
especially when it's
massage it.
No, definitely. And I think when it's soul-bearing stuff, you can't really think about who's going to read it. You've just got to get it out there and just believe that those who need it will find it.
And I guess you already said that you have positive feedback, and I'm sure those people actually needed it, will come forward and say, it sounds like you're just talking to me directly. Don't you get that?
Exactly. And it's really funny, on somebody else's Facebook profile the other day, she mentioned my book, and one of her friends was like, oh, I've read it, I love it. And then some of her other friends were like, oh, can I borrow it from you? Yeah, but there's already a queue of other people. And I was like, okay, so this is perfect. This is what I wanted.
That's awesome. Now, so I want to switch gear a little bit, because earlier on you talk about your program called Live Reboot Camp. So I love the tagline, because she said adulting is hard and you need a sisterhood of best friend forever to have your back, which totally cool. I definitely agreed. As you grow older, you need to have some real friends, good friends, those friends that you can trust, those friends that you can be yourself. And at the same time, we tell you if you are pulling some silly stunt, or if you're not honest, they will just stop you and say, look, I know what you're doing. We need those real friends. And so I love the tagline of your bootcamp, because it sounds really real and honest. So tell me a little bit more about the camp, and what is it like to be in the camp? Who is it for, and all that stuff?
So it's two things that complement each other. So there's an online community, and there's an online program. So everything is done for the busy woman, because none of us have time to be sitting down and watching 45-minute videos and making notes and things like that. So in every module and every lesson, it's 5 to 15 minutes of video or audio. So you can even listen to it when you're driving or cooking the dinner or things like this. So that is the idea, is really for busy women. And the community is just something that's just grown into something so beautiful. Like, my idea was always like the program. And then I was like, oh, I'm just going to do a Facebook group to go with it. And suddenly it just turned into this like global sisterhood of these most incredible women, where, we always hear about when women get together, they're bitchy and they're stabbing each other in the back and this kind of stuff. It's like the exact opposite of that. It's just like this really warm virtual hug of people who've got your back. And so, there are people coming and sharing it in the community and saying, I'm struggling with my 7-year-old, or, the house that my dream house has just fallen through, or, I don't know what to do about work, or, it can be anything. And suddenly there's this group of women who are there asking questions. What about this? Have you tried this? Or I'm here, I'm thinking about you, or, just this real support. And I've actually just added something new to it, which I'm really excited about. So we've taken it to another step now. We now have 4 resident experts in there. So when it was just me, we looked at everything pretty much personal and professional. But now we also have a sexologist in the group. So any questions to do with people's intimacy, desire, passion, sex life, and everything, they've got an anonymous place that they can ask. We have a nutritionist, so everything to do with food issues and diet, stuff like that, because she looks at the whys. It's not a calorie thing. It's a why are you eating this way, and why are you dealing with things. We also have an expert in essential oils, so we can explore other ways to improve our health and our well-being. And we also have an expert who's dealing with all things to do with the subconscious. So she does meditations and EFT tapping and all this kind of stuff. So now I've got these other experts in there with me. So literally we cover everything in the community. So I love it because it doesn't matter what anyone has as a problem when they join us or anything that crops up along the way of life. There's always an expert there as well as the community to help. So yeah, I'm so excited.
It is very exciting because I think, ideas stronger when they're shared. The same with the positive energy, like, you have each other's back, or you're sharing really good tips about certain issue or situation. And when you said earlier, like how some of the groups, people were saying, bitchy, not so nice. And that group is the group you're running is opposite. And I think there's a lot to do with us who starting the group or creating the program. If we are walking in the space with different kind of agenda or with different kind of energy, it's harder to maintain or create a group that matches our expectation, but also where our heart is going. So I think there's a lot credits to you, but also people who join together. And I often feel if people don't belong there, they'll fall apart. Like they'll fall away. They just don't want to participate, right? So, so it is really exciting.
No, it is really exciting, and definitely, and it's really interesting seeing people make friends with each other in there, and then really kind of support each other outside of the group as well. And we had our first face-to-face retreat in the UK in June of this year. And it was so beautiful seeing these women come together who'd never met each other before. And so they were all a little bit nervous. It's like women in their 40s.
Oh, give them half an hour.
And it was so funny because they were all saying to me in private messages beforehand, I'm a bit nervous. And I was like, you guys, honestly, it's going to be fine. And literally half an hour, not even, it was within like 2 minutes, they kind of realized, oh, you're this person, and we've been chatting in the group, and suddenly, there was laughter and there was tears, and really to the extreme, because the feelings could just come out so much deeper because they've already done the vulnerability together and they already know they're in a safe space.
Beautiful. And it's funny when I said half an hour I give you tops, and I can only imagine it would be so great to see each other, because I worked in action movie industry for quite a number of years, and I used to say to people, people say, you can't trust the thing you watch on screen, and they touch up and all this stuff. Yes, it's true. Your skin looks perfect on the screen because people do touch up, but there's something else there. The camera never lies. Like if you have those emotions coming up, you can sense it. So when we do this call, when we're having a good time, you can feel it. Like there's something, even if it's digital, even though it's online through camera, I feel we can sense it. So when you do online group, when you read people's words, there's energy behind it, maybe their live calls, I don't know, but you can sense it. So even though you never meet each other in person, but if you're being real all the time, and when you meet each other, it's exactly the same. Like I met so many people online, and then when I meet them in person, I often say, you look exactly the same. But actually what I meant is that you feel exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. I think the only thing is height.
Oh!
That can be the because like you always see people kind of sitting down or whatever, and then when you meet, you're like, wow, you're so much taller or smaller than I thought. It's so funny.
I have the most embarrassing story about this. So I was same situation. I was in a group situation, and I was telling my girlfriend, I think this man, he's such a lovely guy, so funny, but he seems like he's very small. Like, I don't know why I would mention it. Like, I think he's going to be tiny kind of thing. That would be feeling very comfortable. We can all sit 4 people in this booth or something. I don't know why I was talking about. When I met, and she was giggling because she met him, but she didn't say anything to me. And when I met this person, he sat next to me for breakfast. He stood up, and he's like 2 meters something. He was gigantic, and then everybody laughed because my girlfriend told everybody that my perception of him was tiny, and then he turns into a giant in the group, and he was like, that I agree with you 100%. You can get a sense of people how they like, but not their height.
No, it's always so funny, I think, when you meet them in real life and go,
they're not tall at all, like, or the opposite.
Yeah.
But so tell me, like, to wrap this up, I often like to ask a question that's slightly like beyond what we're doing for work and stuff. But just say what inspires you or what makes you excited in life. I mean, you're doing a lot of exciting things already, like running your program, doing your book, and creating events and living in Indian Ocean. I bet it's beautiful, and you got a swimming pool. So, all jokes aside, what really inspires you, excites you these days?
I have this one thing which is really my driving force, which is to make as many women happy and fulfilled as possible in their lives. Because when a woman is happy, her relationship is going to be happy, her family life is going to be happy, her friends, her extended family, her neighbors, her colleagues, strangers that she sees on the street, she's going to smile at them, she's going to help them. And you have this ripple effect which goes out to the whole of society. And so this driving force for me is to make women happy and feel good about themselves, because then it's impossible to be nasty to other people when you feel this way. And for this then to ripple down to the next generation, to our kids. So I've got 2 daughters. One of them's nearly a teenager, she'll be 13 soon. And I already see the thing with girls, being bitchy to each other, not supporting each other, not loving each other. And I'm like, if we as adults could demonstrate being loving and caring to each other so that the next generation could see it as well, that really is my driving force. And in fact, I have up on my wall, my goal is to make 10,000 women happy through Life Reboot Camp by the end of 2023. So that's my real driving force.
Wow, that's fantastic. So maybe we need to have another interview by then, just to check up on your figures. So you have a good, like, how many women and stuff. It's fantastic. It has been wonderful talking to you today. And to wrap this up, I want to ask you, so how can people find you online, maybe about your Life Reboot Camp and your book, perhaps? So what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Okay, so for Life Reboot Camp, the best thing is my website is sophielebrozec.com/camp. And then you get all the information about Life Reboot Camp. For my book, just go onto any Amazon site and look for my name, Sophie Brozec. You'll find the book. And I was talking earlier about how I have a love-hate relationship with social media. We talked about this before we recorded. So the best place to find me online is actually LinkedIn, because that's really where I hang out, but not so much the other places anymore. So any of those, and by all means, come and say hi.
That sounds amazing. So, and I will also put those links that you mentioned at the bottom of the blog, which is also go along with the podcast. So thank you so much, Sophie. Today has been wonderful chatting with you. And I wish you all the best to increase the number daily, about 10,000 women to be happy and fulfilled.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.